Winter, on a positive light, how much of LGD's positive performance and kind of surprising some other people in the community, how much of that relies on Xiao Wei's capability as a captain?
I think he's a very good leader. He brings a lot of positive atmosphere towards the team. He makes sure that everyone is doing well, feeling good, feeling confident, and having a person that maps out everything in the game. Like, it's really good as teammates of a. If you have someone like this in a team, everyone just focuses, okay, I'm just going to do my job, and I trust my captain. He's going to oversee everything, and we're just going to make sure that we do as we do as his plan goes, and we just trust everything instead of trying to. Like, some teams will be like, oh, guys, I think we should do this, and someone else will, oh, maybe not. Instead of a team that Xiao usually has, it's like everyone just listens to him. So when you make a decision, it's fast. It doesn't go to like a few people discussing during the game. Sometimes you don't have the time and luxury to decide things in 3 seconds. You mostly have only maybe 1 second to decide, okay, we are going in, okay, we are backing off, okay, we are just going to take this tower and just scramble after that. Or someone, okay, we're just leaving this guy to die. So having someone that is the clear leader is definitely, I think, very important in a team.
For a second, I was going to get a little surprised because when you said 3 seconds, I was thinking of that as the short side. And then you were like, well, compared to 1 second, I was like, all right, 3 seconds is a pretty long time compared to 1 second. But in game, of course, that does make a huge difference, especially if you're about to fight or even in the middle of a fight. For Na'Vi, let's look at game 1 going into game 2 then. What can they do? In the draft, you guys didn't seem too happy about how Na'Vi's draft wrapped up. I mean, obviously the start was strong, right? I mean, they got the SF and the qual, but then it didn't wrap up too strong, especially the Disruptor. How did you feel about that? Because up to the mid game, the plays were good, but would you still have rather preferred something like the Wyvern?
Like, the problem Disruptor has in a game like this is that the enemy team has 2 BKB carries, and then when you reach that point, Disruptor's just flat out a weak hero unless you have Ags. Wyvern, on the other hand, could have turned Tiny against Gyro, and then all of a sudden the enemy team's strengths. It's one of the beautiful things about Wyvern is even if you're behind in the game or in a fight, the enemy is strong, great, then they're also strong at killing each other when you use the Winter's Curse. So they could have, I think, for the game plan and for how LGD play with their Tiny or with the Wisp, they picked Disruptor into Wisp before Tiny was picked, but LGD always picked the Wisp with the Tiny. It's like, I can't remember the last time I've seen them with another partner for it. So Na'Vi, in my opinion, should have known better, gone for the Wyvern. Even though art style did play a great Disruptor, I feel like Wyvern could have been a more impactful pick.
All right.
I think that the timing for Tiny to get BKB is generally late. We discussed that he almost never gets a second item. It's, Blink, Scepter, and then maybe a BKB, but generally like AC or something like that before the BKB. So I think Navi's game plan was, okay, we're going to try and win all 3 lanes, and Disruptor will be very useful because they're not going to get BKBs until really late. Or if they do, it's going to be only for the Gyrocopter, and we still have 4 other heroes that the static field is going to be very useful against. But they didn't they won the early game, but with their heroes, they had to win it like very hard. They had to, limit Wisp 6, try and steal the stacks, get axed with Blink, and make the jump on them, and then kill people before the relocate can happen. But everything went okay for them, but just not super smooth. And as you said, there's just no room for errors. If you give them like 1 or 2 team fight victories, they get their BKBs, and then one of your heroes is completely useless, as opposed to Winter Wyvern, who may not be as offensive in the early game, but he is a much safer pick because of the BKBs.
I'd say that the victory condition with having a Wyvern is easier compared to having a Disruptor. Maybe that's easier to understand.
Right, just
much easier to play with a Wyvern. I mean, it doesn't mean that Disruptor wouldn't work. It's just harder.
Now, again, then, as we discussed earlier, and the way that LGD has been drafting is that they wait until the second phase of bans to pick that Wisp, and if it's open, they pick it. Obviously, the only way to take the Tiny out is to pick it yourself at that point. You can't ban it in the middle. Then is it worth it to ban one or the other, and if so, which? Probably the Wisp, I would guess.
Yeah, I don't think LGD ever play Tiny without IO. So if you're scared of that combination, you ban it second phase. I can't remember what their bans were in the second phase.
They could just take it, too. Navi can play Wisp.
They could play it.
Or the Wisp, yeah, I guess.
Have they even played at this tournament yet?
I don't think so, but I'm pretty sure it's...
Soneko plays it well.
Yeah, they can definitely utilize it.
And art style, I actually believe I've seen play it too. So if it's pretty advantageous if both of your supports can play the Wisp. I think... Thinking about it, though, most other teams, you have like a designated Wisp player, but on paper, it's nice if both supports can play it, but because it opens up some flexibility for what the other support pick can be. Ideally, both of your supports play like every support hero, but it's not really realistic. But IO is just so special that, let's say, for example, you want to run, let's say you wanted to run IO Wyvern, then you have a problem if Soneko plays the best Wyvern in the world, but he has to play the
Right.
IO because our style can't play it, because it's so fundamentally different from every other support. But I do think they both play it, so as far as flexibility in draft, it shouldn't be a problem for Navi.
All right, well, we'll see. We are already well into the draft. Went by pretty quickly in the first phases of the bans, pretty straightforward. Navi definitely seems to prioritize that Shadow Fiend, even when they're on the side of banning it, when they're on the Dire side. So going ahead with that ban. Getting the Gyro themselves, but then Dazzle first pick alongside Tusk for LGD. What do you guys make of that?
I think one reason of taking the Dazzle this early as well this time around is to prevent, because LGD rate Dazzle plus Gyro very highly together. So once Navi opens the draft with a Gyro, they immediately feel that we have to take this away to avoid you having too much of a strong combination in your first two picks.
Okay, slowing down a little bit after that Brood ban. Now LGD trying to think of it, and we do have that Wisp ban for Navi against LGD, taking that out, and the Spirit Breaker too. They didn't like having to deal with that. Charging in.
I think a lot of the time it's a sign of weakness for a team if they just start, like they played a strat and you just start banning like 2 or 3 of the heroes that the enemy team played. Because it's like, obviously LGD have other strats up their sleeve, and it's just I think PPD also talked about this in one of his podcasts, or in one of his like blogs, where he's like, you know, the team that lost game 1 went into game 2, and they banned like a lot of other heroes. We just like, okay, we just play another strat, and then you've like put a, like it shows in a way that you put the enemy team on a pedestal, right? It's good to respect them and put out a respect ban, but banning like this is probably a little bit too much, especially because I'm not even sure. Knowing LGD is probably an offlane Tusk, so they didn't even need to ban the Spirit Breaker. They don't play that support, I think, and they're just a little bit too affected by the previous game, I guess is what
I think another problem with that is that I think they you fail to identify the problem. Like the Spirit Breaker, we thought was like interchangeable. It wouldn't really have mattered whether it was a Spirit Breaker or Earthshaker or another number of heroes, but you need to identify like one, I think, key hero from the last game, and like, okay, this hero just like owned us. If you're like, oh, we got owned by the Wisp and we got owned by the Spirit Breaker, you're already in a losing mentality.
Yeah, and with that logic, they should also ban the Tiny, because he also destroyed them. Right?
Ban just every hero that they played last time. So Navi, definitely seems a little shaken after game 1, and the Lina gets through, and LGD will be able to pick that up.
So Tusk Lina, very common combination for LGD. Tusk played by Yao and Lina played by Xiao8. We did see a Gyro plus Winter Wyvern combo that EG used, and these two teams played in different groups. So I'm pretty sure that they would have been watching the EG versus VG game. And Navi is also just very, very fantastic with Winter Wyvern. And if played properly, it can definitely win out versus those two. So that's a good option for them.
I definitely think Wyvern is a good pick again.
Yeah, I think at some point they're going to use that hero. At some point. Right.
The Disruptor.
Oh, the Disruptor again. So this time around it's against the Snowball. I'd say it has more merits than the last game maybe, because you can actually deal with the Snowball much better. But then again, it's a weak support. It somehow falls to the category like Lion a bit, but it's not as bad as Lion at the start. But you're up against Tusk plus Lina, so the laning phase could be problematic for Disruptor.
Yeah, they can just go into Disruptor, and Disruptor is really good versus a combination once you get 6, but getting to 6 is quite the task.
MMY seems not unimpressed. Just sitting there yawning with the screen like, do your thing, Xiao8. I'll play whatever.
I mean, definitely has to be feeling pretty good now halfway through the week for LGD. Some people put them really high, and then on the other side, a lot of people said no, overhyped. People are just expecting too much from LGD, but they're pulling through.
So what happens if you get glimpsed and then you skip into the Snowball right as you get glimpsed? I assume you're in the Snowball, right? I think, but I don't actually, because there's some weird stuff like,
I think you can actually dodge if you go invulnerable or something like that, like Doppelganger, you dodge the glimpse. So I'd say it might be the same as that.
I think Snowball full counters that.
Wow.
If you're getting glimpsed and you Snowball, you just don't move. It would be cool if you glimpse the Snowball away.
And then you start rolling again.
Didn't that happen to Brewmaster Ultimate?
Yes, I was about to say there's the funny interaction where if you get glimpsed while you're using Primal Split, then your Primal Split just starts where you got glimpsed. I think that's still the case, actually. I'm pretty sure that never got changed. So, that's pretty funny.
Alright, well, Storm picked up by LGD, and then the Earthshaker coming out for Navi. Securing that for themselves, also keeping it away.
I like the Earthshaker. It's like much less all in than Undying because it's good versus Tusk. It's good at locking down with Stormer Spirit. It's good at saving her Queen of Pain in case she gets Yule's combo by Lina, and overall just a much more flexible pick. And it's also good at like bursting heroes down before Dazzle can actually do anything about it. They do sacrifice some of their early game for it, but as we saw from last game, it wasn't their early game that was the problem.
Yeah, this time around they have very strong team fight composition. Earthshaker, Disruptor, again like supports that excel at team fighting, but slightly weaker in the laning phase, but excel at the team fight. Wow, I think that's the second game we have Lycan here. I remember the first game was by, maybe third game. First game was by Na'Vi, then probably Complexity had one game as well.
Yep.
So this is the third Lycan.
I believe, in my opinion, LGG has one of the two best Lycan players in the world. They have Sylar, and the other one is Arteezy. But Secret hasn't played it for a long time, actually. But it's cool. It's always cool to see a Sylar Lycan. That's definitely something to look forward to.
Now I actually think Axe would be a good pick. Because Axe is good versus Lycan. It's good versus Dazzle. It's pretty good versus Tusk, too.
It's actually also good against Storm.
Yeah. But I don't know if they're going to turn to it just because it's like the same mentality as like, hey, we lost versus these heroes last game. You know, we lost with these heroes last game. They might not like it, but I actually think it's pretty good here.
The laning phase, however, is the issue for Axe, because if you leave the Axe on the offlane and their supports are not supports that can help him that much. I mean, you can fissure block one wave of creeps early on, so the Axe reaches level 2, but apart from that, these two supports it's very difficult to help the Axe.
Okay, Darkseer also
Wombo combo, so they are going all in for team fight. All in for team fight.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
this is...
I mean, if they could make it work, it's going to look pretty spectacular, it sounds like. But at the same time, I mean, LGD has been looking strong. So at this point, all right, sure. So Na'Vi made it very clear what they want to go for. For LGD, what's the plan here with the Lycan being that last pick?
I think their draft is very flexible. They can either go for, obviously, if they get an early lead from the lanes, the storm snowballs and they pressure the